Welcome back, everyone. This is Elevated Duty Podcast, and this is episode 21.
21.
This is the 21st podcast. That's my favorite number.
Really?
Yeah. Don't you see my
Mine's 17.
license
We
plate?
passed my favorite.
It
Does have 21 on your license plate.
Yeah.
Didn't think about that.
And then everyone that knows me, like all my social media has the 21 everywhere, and there's a cool story behind that. So today we have someone that resembles the portion of the military that basically help us,
They help us in a way that is sometimes overlooked. In the military, we look for, obviously there's prerequisites if you are looking and join the National Guard, active duty, the reserves, whatever you were thinking about doing for military service, we support you. But some of these prerequisites as far as physical strengths and attributes and tests that you have to pass, as well as mental aptitude tests, I think that something that's overlooked is the spiritual health and spiritual welfare for those that are serving within our organization.
Yep.
So would you like to introduce our guest, Rivera?
So that being said, welcome to the podcast, COL Nagel.
Honored to be here on your favorite number, nonetheless, 21. I've been enjoying your work here and to come and to tell the story and get to know you better. I've known you, Sergeant Norcross, for many years. And
yes, sir.
Sergeant Rivera, you bring a lot of gifts and talents to our team. So honored to be here with your audience and to tell the story. Yeah,
thank you so much. You are the first member of the Chaplain Corps here in the Colorado National Guard that we have lucky to have you on for the podcast, and I'm glad that we can bring you on as correct me if I'm wrong, sir, the state chaplain for the Colorado National Guard. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm honored to be the state chaplain. It was, I've come, this November's 18 years here with the Colorado Guard, and it's become like a family to me.
So that it's funny because before we started the podcast, you mentioned this is not your first podcast. So you've been on other podcasts. So and you mentioned like you like to share stories. So but what it feels to be on our podcast after watching some of our products.
Oh yeah, well part of it is because we're on the same team, and I love the Colorado Guard. So I think if we can tell the story of what it means to serve as citizen soldiers. I'm all about it. So we love the creative approach to get the word out, because I don't think everyone knows what we do, and hopefully we can inspire some other young people to serve and join our ranks too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it, sir.
So again, every time we bring people here, we want them to tell their story, and we want them to basically talk on behalf of what they do in the Guard, but we also go back and we see the person behind the uniform and the rank, so because people will see you as the state chaplain, but you also are a human being, and you have a story, you have a past. So for those viewers and watchers out there, who is David Nagel? Like, where are you from? How was your life growing up? Like who are you?
Sure. Yeah, my dad was a pastor of small churches around America, but I spent most of my life growing up in the state of Wyoming. And so you'll see often if you follow me on Facebook or whatever, I'm always at Wyoming Cowboy games or rooting for the Pokes.
Yeah.
It's because we root for the small town, the underdog. Grew up in a small town, and I loved that upbringing. My dad was a pastor. My mom was a piano teacher. My dad got hurt by church ministry and left that and worked for the school district, and so all I knew growing up was I would never be a pastor like my dad. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was not going to do what my dad had done and be a pastor.
Okay.
And so life has a way of taking detours on you, and for me and my faith, I'm a Christian chaplain, so the Lord just kept working on my heart. I went to school to be a music teacher, so I love music. It's been a big part of our family history. But the detours just kept coming. I ended up kind of feeling this nudge to go down to Dallas, Texas for 3 years and go to Bible college after getting a music degree. Ended up coming back to Colorado and got my communication degree. And then I was like, I'm still not going to be a pastor. I got invited to this little church in Lakewood, Colorado. And the pastor there was 70 years old. And he knew I had gone to Bible college. He's like, hey, come and be my youth pastor. I'm like, you're crazy. I'm not doing this. But I took on that job. Love those teenagers. And after about a year or so, he said, hey, Dave, one day you're going to replace me as the senior pastor here. And I literally was like, it's not going to happen. I'm not doing that. And it just kept like pulling me along. And eventually he retired. I became the pastor of a wonderful church in Lakewood, Colorado. Didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was young. I was about 25, trying to figure this out, replacing a 70-year-old pastor.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I met my wife, then my fiance, then now my wife. And I just grew over that next 5 years on how to be a shepherd, how to lay people to rest, how to be there at the car accidents in the middle of the night, how to help couples struggling in their marriage, how to dedicate children in their faith, how to just do hospital calls and write cards and talk in front of crowds. And those years were very formative for me. And then one day I got a call from a retired colonel in the Army, and he said, we're looking for some young pastors to come in. We're burning out our chaplains like crazy because of the surge in Iraq.
Okay.
And that, as he started telling me about the relationships he had with all the troops, how he got to just walk with them, especially as an Army chaplain, get in the field, get your boots muddy, and just walk life. It just lit a fire in my soul. I was like, whew. And so I thought, wow, this sounds beautiful. I don't think my wife will go for it. I called my wife, and she's like, that sounds exactly like you. And so I began that journey, and it kind of detoured. I was signed up to go active duty, got detoured by the then state chaplain, Chaplain Meverden, and he took me under his wing and mentored me like a great mentor. And I carried his briefcase literally, and I just love learning from him as a mentor. And over time, I ended up kind of just moving up and serving through the ranks, and this has been my home. My whole career is the Colorado Guard, and I'm deeply honored to lead a great and growing team.
Yeah, great and growing it is, sir. 14 years is where I'm hitting my career with the Colorado National Guard. I've been Guard my entire time, and I've seen you and your staff throughout multiple different units here in the state of Colorado, and I've never heard anything bad or negative about our Chaplain Corps. We've reached out for emergencies that have happened, and the Chaplain Corps has always been here for us, and I kind of want to talk about that eventually, is where the Chaplain Corps fits in as far as resources for our soldiers. But going back to your childhood, with your father being a pastor and mother being a piano teacher and going to school and moving to Texas, how did that phone call come about? Were you looking into the military? Did you have family that serves? Did you go talk to some recruiters, or was it kind of, in a way, fate, or maybe the Lord stepping in?
It's interesting. We felt something happening. The church was doing fine. It was growing. The budget was great. But we felt a stirring. It's kind of, now you're talking to a spiritual guy, so I'm like, oof, something's going on here. So we just kind of put out some feelers, but nothing military was in my mind at all.
Ever?
Okay. I've always loved my country, but that wasn't even on my radar. So we put our house on the market. People said it won't sell. It sold very quickly. I'm sitting no kidding, in this condo, sitting around a bunch of unpacked boxes. I signed a short-term lease because I didn't know what was coming. I just sensed something was happening, and we were ready. And as I'm sitting amongst those boxes, that's when my phone rang. So I call it providence. I'm like, okay, Lord, getting a hold of my heart here. And that conversation just kind of changed the whole direction of my family tree. Now that I have a son serving in the Army, it just really shaped, and it fits me well because I love people, I love adventure, I love traveling overseas, and the Army's not always easy, but it's worth it. It's been a wonderful journey.
More on that process of coming into the Guard, as recruiters here in the state of Colorado, we have, give or take, about 90 career fields for individuals to choose from, whether it's a specific MOS or maybe they're looking at doing college first and becoming an officer candidate, whether, signing up for ROTC and going through college. There's a million different pathways to get into the National Guard.
Sure.
But there's a few different exceptions, some of that being kind of tryout programs. I know the band has an audition period that you must meet with the 101st Army Band and audition with their leadership to see if you're eligible. I know that if you already have certain credentials, if you're bar certified as a lawyer here in the state of Colorado, or if you have a doctorate or an MD or a PhD, there are different avenues. That also includes chaplains, correct? Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, we call those direct commission chaplains or officers. So you hit on a couple of them. Our docs, our lawyers, which are JAG, and then chaplains. if they have their master's degree and they're endorsed or ordained, they have that experience, they can come directly in through a long packet process. It's a lengthy process. It usually takes a year or so to get that packet done. Or you can do what's really cool in the Army Guard is the chaplain candidate process. That means if you've been accepted to seminary, you find someone to endorse you, a faith group, you can join our program after going through that packet process, and we mentor you for up to 6 years. And we get to watch you grow and develop into a shepherd and determine if that's a great fit for you or not. I myself went through that program too, because I had gone to Bible college for 3 years in my undergrad, but the Department of Defense didn't recognize Bible college, only a seminary.
Okay.
So I went back to seminary. My wife was pregnant with, I think, our second or third at that time. We were doing anything we could to survive that phase of life. We were delivering newspapers in the morning, delivering Boston Market food at lunch. I was waiting tables at night, going to grad school. My wife was working at an adoption agency in Centennial. But we just felt deeply called to one day pin the cross and become chaplains. And so that process, I worked as hard as I could to get through seminary. And then when I was there and got my packet done, then I pinned the cross and became a full-fledged chaplain.
And how would you, if you wanted to go into more details, or how was the process for you at that time in the National Guard? Were you helped? Did you have the mentors? I know you said that you worked underneath Chaplain Meverdeen.
Yeah.
Where were you? Were you kind of the chaplain's assistant at that point?
Yeah.
Did you commission immediately and start working towards
Right.
becoming the chaplain?
Sure.
How was it for you personally? Was it difficult? I know
It was.
everything's difficult, but if you work for it.
I look back, and those are some of the best years of my life. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was a second lieutenant, 30-year-old second lieutenant. So imagine the jokes about lieutenants anyway. But I had some wonderful NCOs like folks like you guys that would sit down and they would shape my beret, would teach me what the acronyms meant. They would help me understand the Army culture. And over time, it didn't take too long. I kind of progressed to eventually become a full-fledged chaplain. And so
That's phenomenal.
yeah.
We had talked about it just briefly about, the more kind of traditional jobs. For those that have this calling, or they feel it in their heart, or whatever the case may be for those watching and listening, and you feel and you know that this may be a calling, or you've been, like you said, sir, it was that providence throughout your life that kind of the Lord or your spiritual guider let you kind of follow this path. For most individuals, our target audience, that you can call it, qualified individuals that are looking to serve in the Colorado National Guard, whether you're in high school or just finishing high school, or you're starting college and you're trying to balance both and you've wanted to serve your country. What advice would you give to those that may be listening or watching that are in that field?
Yeah, for sure.
You said it's a longer process. Where should they start? Should they come to a normal recruiting office?
Yeah, you've hit on a couple things I want to talk about. First, I had no idea the opportunities that exist within the Army. As I've done more research, the Department of Defense is the largest employer in the world. When you count all the civilians and other contractors that work and support. So there's so many opportunities. If people are of high character and love people, they could join my team as a religious affairs specialist or a religious affairs NCO. And those, I don't want to boil it down to this, but they are the force protection for the chaplain. Mm-hmm. We don't carry weapons because of the Geneva Convention. Chaplains don't bear arms. We are there as a confidential spiritual advisor that provides for the free exercise of religion and also advises command when it comes to ethics and morale and things that would pertain to religion on the battlefield. Things that we shouldn't be doing or how that might impact the local indigenous population. But if they come into a storefront, like anywhere around the Colorado Guard network, they can say, hey, that's something that is interesting to me.
Sure.
And then I would love my team to buy them a cup of coffee and tell them more.
Okay.
Tell them more about that journey. Now, if they feel deeply called to be a pastor, a shepherd, men and women that have a shepherd heart, same thing. We're going to interview them and say, first of all, do they fit? This might be the requirement, and I lift the bar a little higher to say I'm looking for humble, professional, compassionate, shepherd-hearted men and women that are not here to earn badges or get rank, but really here to wash the feet of their soldiers. And they don't all have to be Christians like me. I have one of my dearest chaplains. He's an Orthodox Jewish chaplain, so he won't wear a cross like I do. He'll wear tablets like the Ten Commandments. Or we have a wonderful chaplain on the air side. He's a Buddhist chaplain, so he wears a wheel like a Dharma wheel on his above his there. So you'll see different faith traditions. Even if you see a cross, you might want to say, "Hey, tell me about what kind of chaplain you are," because that could be different things. You could be a Roman Catholic priest. You could be a Universalist chaplain. You could be from the LDS tradition. You could be an evangelical chaplain. So it can be a lot of different things.
Now, I know, with the ability that we are so lucky to have in this country and in the state and the COL National Guard to be able to practice religion freely, thank God. And we want to continue to uphold and fight for those rights for every American and viewers and listeners and our soldiers within our force. And you've hit on a couple of them, and I've seen them throughout the force during my time, sir, is, the different insignia badges that these chaplains wear.
Sure.
Is there a list? Is there a number? Is there a limit? Or is there kind of a doctrine preset, certain number of chaplains as far as specific religions are concerned?
Great question. We don't do that kind of quota. What we're trying to do is take care of the force. How do we have enough shepherds in the midst? I take care of Jewish soldiers. I take care of atheist soldiers. When we think about why chaplains exist, sometimes people say, what about separation of church and state? The reason we exist is to provide for the free exercise of religion, but we also want to protect those who don't want to practice religion. You don't have to. That's what makes us uniquely American, and it's a beautiful thing. Congress shall make no law concerning the establishment of religion, meaning we all have to be a certain religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's what makes us uniquely American. That means if you choose to say, hey, I'm from the Norse tradition, okay, let me walk with you as your shepherd and help me understand your journey. A lot of we all have a religious preference we could put in the system. It's all over the map.
Sure.
It's all over the map.
And I think touching that you mentioned of the list and all that, and you mentioned all those tabs, I think that is a reflection of our society. Yeah. You have the freedom to choose the religion you want to follow, or if you don't want to follow any religion, then you have that freedom too. And I like that the military also reflects that under our chaplain program, that it doesn't matter what is your religious background, you can wear whatever or you can follow whatever you like, and you be a chaplain in the military. So I think that's great.
I think it is too. You had touched about it as far as that protection of rights within our organization and through Congress. For those, we've had some individuals that meet a recruiter here in Colorado, and they reach out, and some of the things that they're worried about, obviously when they come in, they don't understand kind of the military aspects yet. Do I get to keep my long hair during basic training? Maybe they didn't want to shave their beard. And as recruiters, it's very easy to say, without asking those deeper questions, no, you're going to shave your head at basic training. You're going to shave your beard. But what about those to where maybe they have that religious guidelines that they're practicing throughout their faith? I know you brought up the Norse, and we have a few Norse practicing members within our organization here, and I see them with beards and other certain things. How do you explain throughout our organization kind of the protections and what those individuals are allowed to do or not allowed to do when practicing their faith during their drill weekends or annual training?
Sure, yeah, especially from what you gentlemen do as professionals. Pre-accession accommodations can be done. And that's a process that's put in place that we can look at, and do. A chaplain will interview that person, look at the religious basis of the request, make sure it's sincere, and then it's part of a larger packet that goes up through the command structure.
Okay.
And that can be approved. And that's happening more frequently with different things from all faith traditions. We have a lot of Christian folks. We have a lot of folks from non-Christian backgrounds. But I want to touch on something about chaplains, though. You don't have to be religious to talk to a chaplain. That's what next year, 2025. This is the 250th anniversary of the Chaplain Corps.
Wow.
So since the days of George Washington, he recognized the need to have men and women in the field that could be good examples of morality and could help spur on our troops to make sure that the spiritual fitness was intact. We don't want to become the enemy in war. We want to call upon that deeper sense of what is right and wrong. And we all might define that a little bit differently, but my goal is to raise up an organization too that thinks about things like this, like wrestles with morality before we're in the fire, that wrestles with things like, hey, what happens if we're in a terrible battle and we lose our battle buddy? Like, how do we go back to our own sense of our moral compass and make sure that that's what's guiding us and not just raw emotion? But a lot of the folks who come to talk to the chaplains, when I was deployed, most of the counselings I did were not religious in nature, at least at first. They were like, hey, I'm having an issue with my girlfriend. I'm wrestling back home with drinking too much. My dog just died. Mm-hmm. It's just called life. And chaplains are a confidential resource that we can hold in sacred trust. And hopefully, if we're decent, we'll learn to earn the trust of our troops. They won't trust us right away. They have to get to know us. Just like anyone, you watch them first. And we just walk with them. And the best way I could develop trust was like with my aviation unit, just lay underneath the helicopters with them as they're turning wrenches, or just go out in the field with them and just walk life. Play Santa Claus at the holiday season. Be with the people. Get to know their families. Lead these marriage and family retreats. Once they see that you're approachable, then maybe when they're going through a difficult time, they lose a family member, they're going through a crisis, then we can walk alongside of them and help them stay in the fight. That's our goal, to raise up the commander's arms and say, let's keep these good troops in the fight and get them ready for who knows what the future holds.
I've seen a lot of that, and I'm sure you have too, Sergeant Rivera. Mm-hmm. It's not pushed, and I think you kind of hit that, sir. The Chaplain Corps, in my career at least, is I have never seen the Chaplain Corps push soldiers to speak up or open up or come have private conversations. But these events that you and your staff have put on for the families and for children and for community events, it's widely known and it's very broadcasted. Yeah. And it is just a light that is shown for our soldiers. Hey, this is not a requirement to come to these events. This is here. We are welcoming you. Yeah. What are some of the biggest differences that you've seen, especially with your background on kind of the civilian side of being a chaplain compared to what's the crossover to now being a chaplain and continuing to be a chaplain and the state chaplain? Are there a lot of similarities between, a civilian chaplain and military? Are there a lot of differences?
Yeah,
Can you touch on that?
That's a great question. When I was the pastor of Green Mountain Christian Church, largely people would come to the church because they either believed the same way, they read the website, they had family members invite them, they came to one of our outreach events like an Easter egg hunt or a garage sale, who knows. But they would largely come to us. As a chaplain, you go to them. So we, especially the Army method of chaplaincy, which I really love, and that's what drew me into the Army of all the branches, you go live amongst the troops. So if you're fake, your troops will smell that out real quick. Mm-hmm. Our troops are very good at sniffing out fakes.
It's funny you say that. One of our last guests, outgoing, State Command Sergeant Major, made a comment, and he told his story that he wanted to make sure got across, that when he was with the artillery out in the field and being kind of reprimanded by an individual who wasn't out in the field but showed up with clean hair and clean shaven and smelled like, I think he said Old Spice, right?
Yeah.
But you're not wrong, sir. For you to get underneath the choppers, as you said, and turn wrenches with the crew and be out in the field with those doing their job. Yeah. Leading from the front and not expecting them to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah, and it's something we continually try to grow at. For us, we got to stay connected to our own families, our own faith system, so that we can be good examples in the midst of whatever life throws our way. We don't know what's coming. My main job and passion now is to raise up a great team of shepherd-hearted men and women so that we're ready for whatever comes. If we go to war, that we're ready. If we have a state mission, that we're ready. And so that's what keeps me up at night, just thinking about, okay, how do I get my team to be strong on the inside so that they can be a great source of strength and support to our troops, no matter what the future gives us.
Twofold question here, and thinking about what was just said, is when a recruiter sits down with an applicant and we have made the decision, and that applicant's made the decision to move forward with the process, and we are starting to input, all of their important data that the Army needs to start tracking and uploading driver's license and social security cards and going through the process. One of multiple times where it's checked as a recruiter to an individual that's joining our team, I have to sit down and ask, do you have a religious preference?
Sure.
And we've seen a whole lot. I've seen no preference. I've seen non-denominational. Some people do have a religion that they've practiced their entire life and they want to continue, so we annotate that.
Sure.
What advice do you have for somebody in the organization when they sit down and say, I don't have a preference and I'm not sure? And maybe it's even just a quick minute that I have with that applicant that I can see a kind of spark or fire that says, I don't know. What does that mean? And I say, it's okay. I'm gonna mark, no preference right now. But we do have a Chaplain Core. What's available for our soldiers as far as finding that religion if they start to come to these events or reach out to their chaplains within their unit?
So the motto of the Chaplain Corps is nurture the living, care for the wounded, and honor the fallen. That's our driving mission. Those things, to either perform support directly or to provide for it. So I can't do some things for other traditions that's not authentic to me, right? Mm-hmm. I can't. So sometimes people think, oh, you're a chaplain, you must just do all the different religious services. Well, I do Christian chapel services. That's who I am as a follower of Jesus since I was a little boy. But if you're a Jewish soldier, I'm going to help you get to my rabbi. If you're a Buddhist soldier, I'll help you get to my Buddhist chaplain. But one of the things we did years ago is one of our generals was gracious to allow us to have a mandatory check station at every periodic health assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So once a year, all of our soldiers go and get everything checked out, their blood pressure, their height, weight, whatever. Just make sure they're still doing okay medically. Well, they come and check in with us. This Saturday, we'll be doing hundreds of soldiers will come through, and all we get is that short little window to look in their eyes and say, are your needs being met? Do you know who your chaplain is? Do you know about, here's a little test you can take for your own spiritual fitness level. But there's a whole list from the Department of Defense, 137 or something religious preferences you can pick from, like Baskin-Robbins. And there's no pressure, but I do want them to say, hey, are you wrestling with how you overcome adversity? Where do you get a sense of right and wrong from? Is it a poster on the wall? How do you know what gets you out of bed in the morning? What keeps you going when life is falling apart? We're looking at those deeper sense of purpose and mission. That's what spiritual fitness is. How do you overcome adversity? How do you pass down legacy to your children? Because I'm telling you, when you're in the fight, and all of us are going to walk through ups and downs in life, we all do.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that says, yeah, I can keep going? I keep going because I begin with the end in mind. Like Dr. Covey says, I have this long-term vision so that when life is falling apart, I don't quit. Mm-hmm. I don't let that detour throw me off.
And that I want to touch on that you mentioned, the PHAs. I think I have never seen that before in any other state.
When you were in the reserves, you didn't see that?
No.
Really?
No. In Puerto Rico, I met a lot of good chaplains, and
they've got some great ones down there.
Yeah. But then that, you have a chance to either see one of our chaplains or what was it? He's not chaplain's assistant anymore.
Yeah, religious affairs specialist.
So I think it was one-on-one, and I think it was that's where I met Captain, was it Fanning?
Chaplain Fanning.
Fanning. He was a lieutenant.
Oh yeah.
When I met her.
She's she just received her major rank, so she's promoting.
Oh, wow.
So excited for her.
She's going fast then.
Congratulations first, if you're listening.
She actually has been with us since she was very young, 22, 23, and she's been here a long time. And
wow.
She's an amazing part of the team. Yeah, that's just an initiative. We have a whole bunch of Colorado-specific ideas to get in front of troops, and here's the key, I think, to build trust.
that being said, like, so what I wanted to mention is that that put a face to the name.
Yeah.
So, and then basically my conversation with her was like, how's your day going? And then I think she mentioned something to me, and then I replied to her with something, and then it was a connection there for something she was doing, and we probably spoke for, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's crazy, like, even that helps, 7 minutes of a conversation of someone asking you how are you doing.
Yes.
And then listening to someone else.
Yeah.
That, I think that's super cool. Yeah.
We are built for community, and I think there's an epidemic of loneliness in America right now. People are so socially connected online, and they have very few friends.
Mm-hmm.
Real, transparent, raw, authentic friendships, and that's what I'm striving for. I want to say that I used to think, man, I should have stayed active duty. I would have seen way more of the world. I could have changed every 3 years. I'm so thankful for my active duty Compo 1 brothers and sisters. I'm so thankful I'm a guard chaplain. And here's why. Number one, I've gotten to see the world too. But two, I get in-depth relationships with folks. It's almost like being a community pastor in the sense of, like, Norcross, I've known you for 14 years. Sir. In active duty, I might bump into you if we go somewhere else, but there's that trust. You don't have to like me. I'm sure not everyone does, but at least they're like, well, I know what he's about.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't connect with me, then I hope you'll connect with one of my teammates.
It's we were talking about it before we started the podcast, sir. I remember when I had first joined 1st 157th, we were still stationed at Fort Carson at 811, and I had heard your nickname actually, sir, of Red Thunder.
Red Thunder.
And I thought, I wonder where you got that nickname. And little Private Norcross is not going to go up and ask you.
You should, though.
I should have.
Yeah.
And I know you would have greeted me with open arms, and I could have learned. But it's funny coming back full circle. I have continued to see you and your staff, and that is one of our biggest selling points. When people come in and they talk about, yes, I want to do the military, and kind of what are the differences between the compos and active and the guard and the reserves, and I say, listen, that family aspect, you're going to make friends, and that extended family, this is the family that you're going to choose if you so want to continue.
It's a small town.
It is.
Mm-hmm. I know it has this, maybe people think, small town, they know I'm telling you, the relationships have been the sweetest part of this whole journey. I can still, when I was deployed with these Joes, I could learn to memorize their walk in the desert. I could see them. I could be like, oh, that's one of mine. And it was the greatest joy for me when we came home. To this day, those we've lost several since coming back from the deployment, from a couple motorcycle accidents, one from cancer. They still stay with me. And that sounds a little like a sappy, cheesy chaplain talk. I'm telling you, that has been such a rich journey for me that when I retire one day, I'm going to look back and be like, that was a sweet season of life.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, sir. Compared to the active duty to where you are forced to move pretty regularly, or even in the community, if you move and you have a church or spiritual leaders within your life. Personally, I've seen people towards the end of their life, expected or not expected, have to reach out to a chaplain that maybe the family didn't know, or they're serving with a chaplain that they have not had the experience to sit down with on the active side. And of course, they're going to, I've never heard a bad story of a chaplain not stepping in and being the utmost professional chaplain they can be. But here we have those relationships.
We've had a lot of tragedies with, it just happens. All of us die eventually, right? And so recently I'm just thinking about a funeral I did recently where he had already been out of the guard for some time. He'd retired and it was moved to Texas. He calls me or texts me out of the blue. He's like, hey, Chaplain Nagel, my dad passed away. He's going to be buried up in northern Colorado. Would you do the service? Well, that connection, I'm not just some random rent-a-preacher, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of my family. And so if we're able to, that becomes a lifelong commitment. Even every wedding I do, I say, hey, when you go through pre-marriage counseling with me, you're stuck with me. I know every couple I've done their wedding. They don't all make it because life's hard. And but they know they have someone they can go back to and say, like I just did my weekly take a knee before getting here, and one of the guys who just came in, I had done his wedding and got to catch up with him. He's retiring after 30-some years, and that for me is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
You don't have to come and talk religion. Although I might ask you, hey, tell me your story. Tell me what keeps you going, what gives you meaning and purpose. That's called getting below surface level talk. Like, hey, how's the weather? How the Broncos doing? Right?
Yeah.
But the people that I hire, that I believe God's brought to me, I'm very careful to screen them, because they could do a lot of damage if they misuse that trust.
Sure.
They could really hurt some people.
We had talked about maybe those individuals just recently when we were discussing, maybe somebody that wasn't sure in their faith, or, and they can reach out to any chaplain or chaplain's assistant here in the state of Colorado. But for those that are deeply rooted in their faith, and maybe there's specific guidelines. I've had a few looking throughout the state that have reached out to us, and on the recruiting side, hey, I'm really looking at joining, but here's the thing. I've never missed a Sunday service. I need this in my life, for my family, for myself, for my spiritual well-being. Can you explain to those watching and listening what we provide as far as the Colorado National Guard is concerned during those drill weekends and training periods and deployments, and what's available for them and how they can continue practicing their faith?
This comes right out of statute that chaplains, when practicable, will hold a Sunday service. It's one of our major things that we do. The reason we exist largely is because that free exercise of faith is hard to continue when you're in an austere environment. So let's say we're deployed to Saudi Arabia. It's hard to get to your local Baptist or Methodist church there, right? Or go get Catholic Mass, or go to your Buddhist temple. That's why you take the church with you. So we do our best to provide a chapel service every drill weekend, and multiple during annual training. So you'll see flyers up at Joint Force Headquarters. I'll be leading chapel this Sunday. And it's open to everyone. Mine is a Christian chapel because I'm a Christian chaplain. But everyone's welcome. And I try to just make it a place that's warm, welcoming, donuts and giveaways, whatever. But the heart of it is really authentic to who I am as a pastor. So we offer that. All soldiers are welcome. And we try our best to accommodate people to make sure that they know that they can. That's why we fight. That's why we serve. Free exercise of faith, freedom of speech, the right to assemble, the freedom of the press. That's why we put on the uniform and serve, to keep these American freedoms that we have.
So I was going to mention, I think earlier on the podcast you mentioned that if you don't provide the service for a specific religion, you know that chaplain that does. And I think the biggest example of that is when you go to basic training, right? And like on the weekend, they have everything. And they have. It's funny because they post the religious services. I think during the week, this is the times, and then because not all the times will be the same, but then these are the times for all these religions. And
I wish I would have been a basic training chaplain, because you've never seen a chapel as full as that basic training. And a lot of it is like, hey, you guys can get yelled at by the drill sergeant, or go take an hour and be at chapel and get some free donuts, and a lot of them will take a nap. I don't care, as long as they're coming, they get encouraged, and a lot of them are really seeking to grow in their faith too. Yeah, you're right. It's called perform or provide. If I can't perform that religious duty for you, like pray in the way that's meaningful to you, or like I can't do last rites. I'm not a priest. But I can get you to a priest. We bring one in to do Mass at Joint Force Headquarters every month. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's providing. I perform it. I can pray for you. I can preach. I can teach you the Bible. Or I provide those things that are meaningful for you to follow your tradition.
I just got flashbacks talking about basic training, and I hope you can forgive me. I've carried this for 14 years when I was at Fort.
Is this confession time?
If that's okay. I feel like I can open up if that's okay, sir.
You betcha.
But yeah, basic training in 2010 at Fort Benning then, Fort Moore now, when I was becoming an infantryman, the only chapel service that did offer, you said free donuts. For us, it was juice and I think cookies at the Jewish service. Yeah. And so we would show up and they changed the policy where you had to go to the entire service to get the juice and cookies.
Oh yeah, they're not stupid. You got to sit through it, huh?
But seeing it then and then continuing moving forward, I've seen being out in the field, the services that are held.
Yeah, field services. Yeah,
and I'm so glad. There's one question that's kind of on my mind as NCOs here for Sergeant Rivera, and the soldiers that are underneath us, they come to us for some problems sometimes, and we develop these relationships with our soldiers, and we spend time with them and reach out to them, even when we're not at drill, in between drills, in between annual trainings, and we try and get to know these soldiers. But sometimes there's still things that they will not tell us that they're holding deep inside. And I know through J9, our directorate, and our family programs, and the resources that we tell people that we have in the National Guard that are so much more abundant and easily accessible than maybe active duty or reserves. What do you see when we can refer these individuals where we know they may have something that they're not telling us?
Sure.
What do you see, and what have you seen in your career, sir, the kind of the majority problems, the main problems that for our soldiers listening, if they're experiencing that, you've dealt with it and you can help them. It's something that you've done and your team have done.
Yeah, that's good NCO work. When you sense there's more going on or people are struggling. One of the things, you mentioned J9, that might not make sense to those. It's a new directorate that's a one-stop people shop for folks that help prevent things from happening and also respond, our family programs, our prevention specialists. But I'm very intent on having a very close relationship with our behavioral health team, too. So we do these once a quarter lifeguard care luncheons where we get together, and all of our psychological health providers and the chaplains, we get together, we build trust. Here's the bottom line. Whatever it takes to get someone the help they need, get them off to counseling, get them finding the grief counseling they need. I was working with a gal this morning who's just walking through a lot of grief issues. And so behind the scene, we're like the toolbox people. We're just like, okay, what will work to help them stay in the fight and stay healthy? But we need good references, referrals from NCOs that bring them to us. And then that's what we're supposed to be doing behind the scenes, allowing the command team to focus on the mission. And behind the scenes, the chaplains are the confidential resource to try to get them to the folks that can help them. There's some things I can't help you with, and that's okay. That's called humility. Know your limits and say, whew, we're going to need some deeper stuff here. And there's so many free resources for soldiers, for counseling, for therapy, for support groups, for resources in the community. And what we do is we network with our community partners and with the assets that the Department of Defense allocates, and we take care of people. That's what we do.
And that being said, so the way I see sometimes the chaplain is as the primary care in some way, at least in the program here. And I've seen it... I'm with the MECBOT, so we drill kind of way away from everyone. We're all the way in Carson, away from all the armories, and then almost every weekend we have a chaplain. He's usually the major. I think he's the 169 major. I forgot his. If I see his face, I know him. I forgot his last name.
Chaplain Bean or Chaplain Larson coming.
Larson,
wonderful guy.
Yeah. So it's crazy that you mentioned before is, turning wrenches and doing all that stuff. We don't turn wrenches on the MECBOT, even though we have a couple of mechanics, is mainly signal guys. But, being part of the unit and showing up and then, at least, once a month, it helps you to, understand that person.
A little connection.
Yeah, and then you can tell if someone is off just because you've seen it like.
Yeah, how can you know? And that's... You mentioned something earlier, like is there a quota of certain types of chaplains? No. I'm sure that we're trying to reach as much of our diverse Department of Defense as we can.
Sure.
But I'm not looking at, okay, I need to have one of this, one of that. No, I'm looking at, are they the right kind of shepherd-hearted men and women? The chief of chaplains years ago recognized the need to have a battalion chaplain. So every battalion to have a chaplain team. We call it a unit ministry team. Or in a joint context, it's called a religious support team, RST. And so that kind of gives us our baseline number. how we're doing that. Now, the problem is when we have like the MCPOD, it's an itty bitty unit. We call them an IBU.
Yeah.
So one of my challenges to the team is, what are you doing to take care of off-grid, off-cycle soldiers? If you just focus on the ones that you see all the time, you're going to have all these sheep over here who've never seen a shepherd. And one of the things that drives me nuts is when people say, yeah, I spent 20 years in the military, I never met a chaplain. I want that not to be common in the Colorado Guard. I want them to be like, yeah, I'm not religious, but yeah, I'd see my chaplains. Or, yeah, I knew that they were there. They offered a robust, we call it a building strong and ready teams program. It used to be called Strong Bonds. Family events, weekend events, date night events. We want them to at least say, yeah, that was a very, very active and present Chaplain Corps.
And you had just mentioned a lot of these programs that are being put together through J9, through family programs, and through the Chaplain Corps. And we're a little bit different. Being National Guard, if you don't know, and those that do know but may be interested in joining, our minimum requirement is that one drill weekend a month, Saturday and Sunday, and then, usually 2 weeks in the summer for our annual training. Now, these offers and these services that are provided by the Chaplain Corps during our drill duties for drill weekend and annual training, does that go away? Are we still accessible? Are our soldiers and those that are going to be joining our organization, are they still accessible to reach out to the Chaplain Corps when needed, when it's the week off of drill and they're at home and there's an issue and they want to reach out? How does that work, sir?
Yeah, I tell my chaplains as they come aboard, hey, I can pay you as much as possible. But the reality is, if you become a good chaplain, the problems that people have don't just happen on drill weekend.
Correct.
So
there might be a few, maybe more, but
so if you call me, Sergeant Norcross, and it's a Tuesday night, I'm not going to be like, hey, you can talk to me when I'm on the clock, buddy. That's not how chaplains work. We're going to take those calls. And we track all that data quarterly, all the off-duty calls, all the counselings, the types of counselings we do, because that helps us kind of figure out how to target. And you asked me earlier, like, what are some of the major things that we see?
Yes.
Relationship issues.
Okay.
Money issues. Conflict. Stress. It's called life.
Sure.
It's like what we all deal with.
And again, we go back to the J9, and we even have a financial advisor in the J9.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
So,
Michael Snowden.
We got to bring him here and then give us a little bit of class on finance.
Yeah,
I met him.
I went and talked to him about my own budget stuff and just got some ideas for my son, and my kids who are in college and those things. There are so many resources if you want to take advantage of them.
What would you say, sir? I know soldiers within our organization, especially right now, maybe junior enlisted, they're trying to be in the right place at the right time, do the right thing 15 minutes early.
Right uniform.
And they're out there training. And, sometimes the training is, we're in austere environments here in Colorado and with weather and all these accentuating circumstances, but a lot of times some of these junior soldiers are told, as far as like physical well-being, hey, change your socks, drink some water, take an ibuprofen, move on.
Yeah.
And for financial, they get briefed yearly, and it's hey, you need to we'll help you develop a budget. How would you go about explaining, instead of just the brush of, hey, we need you to attend service, what would you tell these soldiers? What's the first thing that you would tell them if they need to take that knee?
I would say this is very clear. What is your community like outside of drill weekend? Do you have mentors and people you're mentoring? Do you have a community of people? It could be a chess club. It could be a Pokemon club. I don't care, but are you doing something? Are you doing taekwondo? Are you in church?
Shooting club.
Shooting club. Yeah.
Sure.
One of the best shooters we have.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are we... I will tell you that even the other day I was sitting in a meeting that was going nowhere quickly, as meetings do, and I wrote a little note, text 10 people today. I just wrote that to myself. And so throughout the day, I just texted 10 of my friends that live all over the country, because I know now that those investments in relationships are what are going to help me through the difficult times in life. So I would say that to all my soldiers, hey, get to your local place of worship. You come to drill one week and we'll do our best to give you a chapel service.
Sure.
Continue growing. Continue finding people that will pour into you, that will be real with you, that will help you through the dark times. And my life is very rich because of my friendships.
Yep. And it's firsthand. This isn't scripted. You and your team, just recently came down to the recruiting retention battalion. We had kind of a morale day at Topgolf here in Centennial, Colorado, and talking about that resiliency and, hey, it's time for me to take a knee that we had just talked about, and I need to kind of look inwards myself and my surroundings and my community, and do I need less screen time? What are some of the things that I can do in my life to improve my relationships? And I took that to heart, and I know a lot of the recruiters did as well, and we were taking notes, and I see, everyone has horror stories of, things that happen and the horrible, tragic events that they're unavoidable. But with that team and with what you're providing, I can attest that it works. And if we continue to rely on this family here in the Guard, I think we're going to continue moving forward in the right direction.
Yeah. I feel sad I missed that one.
It was great.
I had weapons call.
I hope you did well.
Very important.
I passed.
Okay.
I passed.
I think
I'll take a pass.
What we talked about that day was like, how do you become healthy overall, not just physically?
Yeah, it was a holistic.
It's like a H2F, holistic health. So like, how's your sleep? What are you eating? Do you have any kind of spiritual fitness? Meaning, do you have any purpose for getting out of bed in the morning?
And that's basically what your program does on the PHA.
Yeah.
Like they're there and they're asking, are you sleeping well? Are you staying awake at night? No.
Yeah.
Okay. How are you eating? Stuff like that. It's not. It's basically.
Most
you
people
spoke to God. Yeah. They don't go straight to that.
Yeah. I would say at those periodic health assessments, probably when we have a big event, there's probably 2 or 3 out of several hundred that we directly walk right to psychological health, because life is falling apart. And a lot of times people just don't have an opportunity to say, hey, here's what's really going on. I'm really hurting. I'm struggling. I just lost my marriage. I'm depressed. I'm thinking about suicide. Well, that kind of warm handoff is how we mitigate and try our best to keep our soldiers from taking action.
And that's why I see, now that I'm talking to you, the way I see you guys is as a primary care. It's like you're the first line. As now that you're doing the program that way, he says, because that basically put the chaplain into that person in front of them.
Think of it as embedded care. So we are like, whenever we are in a deployed or field setting, I advise my team to set up next to the medics. Yeah. I call it the M&M Center, the ministry and medical, because a lot of the times what they need is to see my whiskeys, my medics. And sometimes the medics will say, I think you need to go talk to the chaplain. Just get something off your mind.
Yeah, I think your body is not necessarily hurting. You're hurting somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
For those that, when they come and meet us and say, I have no religious preference, and whether they're agnostic or atheist or whatever they choose to believe or not believe, when they have these issues, what do you recommend for those soldiers that maybe have found a religion, or they're struggling with religion, they've lost religion, we try to regain? What would you advise these soldiers to do, or those they're going to be joining? Hey, do I need to go to the chaplain first?
They can go wherever they feel comfortable. But one thing I do encourage my chaplains is go meet the new soldiers. Give them a king-size Snicker bar, and at least introduce yourself, or have it as part of the orientation checklist that you drop by the chaplain's office and just say hi. And the thing that I've done my whole career is I just say, hey, tell me your story. Tell me your story. And it's amazing, the stories of our soldiers, where they've come from, what they've overcome, what they believe, what they don't believe. I have become a much better pastor because I became a military chaplain. It really took some of the rough edges off of me, because I'm surrounded every day with people who don't believe the same way I do, but yet we would die for each other in battle. That's what's so cool. That band of brothers and sisters is it's not just a movie. You're like, I don't care what color you are or what faith tradition you're, we love each other.
Right.
As long as you're here and you have the right intent and you're trying your best to be a good warrior, man, that's what makes us uniquely an American Army, the U.S. Army.
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
Yeah, of course. One of the questions I've kind of been thinking about since we sat down was, I've looked in my career at senior leaders, senior enlisted, senior officers. You get to a point, maybe in rank or position or authority, to where you don't have as many mentors anymore, and you don't have that that person that may be looking out for you that you did in the younger stages of your career.
Yeah.
And I've been sitting here thinking about the Chaplain Corps and you guys going above and beyond, being on call 24/7, state chaplains for everybody, Army and Air here in the Colorado National Guard. What is a support system for you, sir, and for your team?
Great question. Yeah, one of the things we do is we started the Colorado Guard Legacy Corps. So those who've retired from the Colorado Guard Chaplain Corps are invited back to everything that we do. As far as like we have a kind of a dining in coming up where we're doing kind of a celebration of the Chaplain Corps, and we're inviting our Legacy Corps members to come and to be part of that.
That's amazing.
I remind my team that we stand on the shoulders of giants who've gone before us. So people like Chaplain Meverden and Chaplain Franz and Chaplain Staunton and Chaplain Murphy, Master Sergeant Byers, and some of these folks, Chaplain Cowan and Chaplain St. Ange, they're welcome and included in our annual holiday party that I host at my house or other places, when we go to the rodeo during the stock show, because it's important that all of us continue to have mentors. Just because I'm the state chaplain doesn't mean I don't. Probably more so, I need some gray-haired folks or other senior folks who pour into me and say, Dave, don't be discouraged. Stay the course. Don't give up. There's been many times Chaplain Meverden has bought me pancakes at a local village inn and said, Dave, I know you're tired. I know you're discouraged. Don't give up. And that guy's like a hero to me.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I want to do the same thing for my team coming up. I want to be that same kind of, and so I always think we all should have mentors and have people we're mentoring. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And never think you're above it.
Yeah.
Because the moment you think you don't need it is when the worst thing I could do is have some big dramatic moral failure.
Yeah.
Because people be like, aha, those religious people, bunch of hypocrites. Or it would just bring dishonor to the Chaplain Corps, which is 250 years old, or my family name, and more importantly, on my own faith. And the reason that happens often is because people become isolated, and they're easy to be picked off by pride, by, just temptations or whatever. Sure. You've got to always stay connected to people. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Do you think personally that you, in your duties as a chaplain, coming from, the civilian chaplain and growing in the ranks into the rank that you are now, sir, and going to, the plethora of military schools and using the military decision-making process, what do you think the difference in how you conduct your chaplain duties now, or where you would see yourself if you didn't have the opportunity to join the Guard?
Yeah.
And do you think that it's a better way? Do
you know the investment the Army puts in all of us if we're willing to take it? The courses that I've been sent to, mediation courses, mountain warfare, to war college. These things are incredible opportunities to continue growing.
Sure.
I tell my teenage kids, I'm like, high school's not the end. It's just the beginning. You should be lifelong learners. And so I've become a much better leader because of what I've learned. I've had officers and NCOs who've pulled me out of the field to sit in rooms and do MDMP, military decision-making process, and learn how to be a staff officer. And that actually, although it's boring to some chaplains, has facilitated the growth of a wonderful program. And I've got great chaplains coming up below me that are learning to become very competent staff officers. It may sound boring, but if you don't have money, you're not going to do ministry.
Yeah.
And if I don't know how the Army handles money and understand how to navigate how to get into the operational process, I'm not going to be a very effective leader as a state chaplain. So that's what I'm trying to build that way.
Yes, and it answered it. Kind of my follow-up question to that was, if we have somebody that's looking into coming to the National Guard and get into religious studies and start practicing faith and continuing to lead those, and like you had said, sir, become that shepherd within our organization. You had said at the beginning of the podcast that, Geneva Convention, you are now allowed to, carry a firearm. That's why you have your team that helps you. Yep. But sometimes we have these individuals.
I wish you were on my team with the shot that you are.
Bring me over, sir. If we can transfer my AGR duties, and I would love to protect you full time.
Oh, yeah, you guys do great.
No, but some of these, I haven't had a whole lot yet. that have came in and they're thinking about the National Guard on the religious side. I've had one or two, and they say, am I going to be hindered? Am I going to have the same schooling opportunities? And I love that you brought up mountain warfare, and I want to end the conversation with there's some redesign, and there's some conferences happening at Big Army right now, and I would love to hear your opinion at the end of the podcast. But would you say you have been hindered or not allowed to progress throughout your military career rank-wise or school-wise as a chaplain compared to a regular conventional soldier?
It's been an unbelievable adventure. Now, again, watching my son, who's a second-year ROTC, and getting to watch him, he was just he did a field training exercise. They call it FTX at Fort Huachuca, near the border of Mexico, down there in Arizona. Watching him get to learn leadership skills and lead a squad and be a platoon leader, a platoon sergeant. I'm just like, he's 19 years old. My only regret is that I joined at 30 and not at 22. But I do think probably what helped me get ready to become a chaplain was cutting my teeth in a local church and learning how to preach and learning how to work with families in crisis and learning how to respond to really tough situations. It got me ready for doing death notifications and the trials. And one time, I think Chaplain Everton did 9 funerals in one day at Fort Logan.
Wow.
9. It's clockwork. We were laying to rest mostly at that time World War II vets. I think 7 is my record in one day. But those things are not easy, and that's why when we bring you in direct commission, it's because you've already walked life, and you're generally like the guy today we're bringing aboard is 40 years old.
Wow.
As a chaplain candidate. But think about a 40-year-old officer, second lieutenant. That would be.
We have a picture of him, right?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe you got to pull
Do
it
you
up.
have it on the?
Yeah, he was just today. He got to join our team. Come back. I think it's at the top of the page there. Think about a typical battalion commander. How old are they generally? A lieutenant colonel, roughly
40
to 45, something like that.
Yes, sir.
So in walks a 21-year-old chaplain. That's going to be tough. But when you see a guy like Mike, who's joined our team today, he's a nurse in Colorado Springs, former Air Force, brings his whole family to us, and he is a humble, shepherd-hearted guy who felt deeply heart-tugged to come work with soldiers. He heard about what it was like to be in the Army, and he's like, I want to do it. And so Mike is going to go serve at one of our units up in Fort Collins at the BSB, and he's going to do great.
That's so amazing. What advice do you give? Do you give kind of the same advice for people coming onto our team, or is it specific kind of guidelines, left and right limits for those, hey, I'm sitting here watching the podcast, I'm listening, hey, this is me, this is kind of my upbringing, this is my background. What advice would you give those individuals? The big 3, the big 10, whatever you would like to tell them that are listening right now. This is what I can't do. This is what I should expect.
You mean if they wanted to pursue chaplaincy or join the military period?
Either, but specific maybe in coming into our Chaplain Corps.
Yeah, so you'll see very clearly we have 3 words that we look for: compassion, humility, and professionalism. Those are the 3 things I'm looking for when I recruit. And my dream, my long-term goal is to be 200% full by 2034.
Wow.
So that itty-bitty units and off-cycle units and people like at the schoolhouse and medical command, that we have more embedded shepherds to help people. That's my dream. That's the long-term goal.
2034. That makes me think of a question here is, how have you seen the Chaplain Corps change from when you had came in and the challenges that we faced, as we get, ever further moving in technology and social media? You talked about it becoming more alone. What are some of the big things that you've seen change that strike you in your career, sir?
There's a lot. When I was first at Chaplain Basic in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, we had the senior chaplain come in and talk to us, and he said, you need to start wrestling now with what it's going to mean to kill people by robot someday. And we were like, Who is this?
It's happening right now.
Who's this nut job? We're like, what is he talking about? Is he reading sci-fi? It's exactly what's happening now.
Yep.
Warfare is changing dramatically, but human souls don't change. So we're like, okay, how do we minister in that context? How do we take care of the human element as technology advances? Many of us older folks joined right after 9/11, and it was a counterinsurgency war on terrorism. And now we're pivoting to get ready for what we pray amongst is never to happen, but large-scale combat.
Yeah.
What's it look like to go nation to nation again, like World War II?
Yep.
What would that look like, and are we ready for that? Using drones and cyber and space and all the different, and that's why things like our military training actually helps us think through that and filter it through our other training as clergy members.
And then I want to go back to that you mentioned, the MDMP puts the Chaplain Corps inside the military and basically tells you the big picture. What are you doing as part of the big picture? When I was introduced as part of the MDMP, I was like, that doesn't need to deal with me as public affairs. And then I was like, oh yeah, you specifically have messaging, you work with civil affairs, you do this. I was like, wait a second. And then I look at the MDMP like totally different.
Yeah, public affairs can win or lose battles, right?
Yeah.
And that Abu Ghraib situation in Iraq, when that was publicized in a negative way, when troops weren't held to accountability, that cost the lives later on of American service members.
Yeah.
So all that matters.
So, that's great that you looking forward, we're looking at the big picture, not basically just at the core or a specific MOS or at your religion. We're looking at the big picture.
It's people. Yeah. There's people still in the military, right?
All of this, future warfare and large-scale combat operations, and that made me think of, we talked about it twice before so far in the podcast, of you not being able to legally, Geneva Convention, correct, sir, not able to carry a weapon.
Right.
One of the questions, going back to when I ask these applicants what their religious preference is, there's a specific button that I have to click yes or no to. And then when we get to MEPS and your final processing and you are enlisting into your MOS, when you meet with our guidance counselors, is, are you a conscientious objector?
Right.
Can you explain, are you a conscientious objector, sir? Is your team? How does that work as far as not being able to carry? But if
those are different things.
Okay.
If you've seen the hit movie Hacksaw Ridge, Desmond Doss,
great movie,
incredible. I mean, the guy ended up saving dozens and dozens of American lives. He was a conscientious objector who was able to serve as a medic. There's different categories of conscientious objector, but that's a process, too, that chaplains are trained to help take people through that. Let's just say that you're already in the military 10 years and you have this big life event that changes your core belief system on the ability to, could I ever pull the trigger? I have the enemy in front of me. Well, there's a process we could take them through to vet that and make sure it's sincere to do that. Clearly, from a recruiting standpoint, you want to identify that up front. Is that going to prohibit them from serving in the military? So there's a process for that too.
So that was a eye-opening for me, because when I went to basic training, it was this kid, and the drill sergeant pulled him apart, and he called me to listen to the conversation, and he needed a body buddy, and he's like, I don't want to carry my weapon.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you're out, and they took him out.
Oh yeah.
So is that the proper way? Did the drill sergeant was right, or?
I would say, no matter who you are, it's okay to consult with the team and say, can we talk to the chaplain? On issues of religious accommodation or conscientious objection, that's why we're there, to help advise command to say, maybe there's another way here. That might very well have been failure to adapt, and it's just those other things going on, whatever.
Yeah, I think he put he was regretting to train, or he was like, he didn't want to train. So now that I'm seeing it, I'm like, probably the drill sergeant was wrong.
I don't know. I would have to know exactly what happened. Everything's different, but but it's at least worth asking the question. Hey, can we slow down a second?
Yeah.
Before we jump.
But based on the that specific case, he was like, oh, your drill sergeant failed to you. But then, not that being said, that you mentioned, like, a life-changing event can make you, and then you can do like a religious accommodation. Yeah,
and that's a whole other podcast, really. But really get to know the soldier, hear their story, take that extra 5 minutes, ask some questions, and that might help you uncover what's the best way to take care of both the mission and the individual.
So basically, look for guidance is the best.
Yeah, look for guidance. Yeah. Consult with your professionals. I run everything. Frequently, I talk to JAG about issues. You should have a team of professionals around you that say, hey, what's my blind sides on this? What am I missing?
Yeah.
Even consulting confidentially to another chaplain, like, hey, do you think, is there another resource here?
Sure.
It's okay. It's good.
Now, I know you had mentioned, your kind of end strength goal, and we're looking into the 2030s. What would you like to tell, if you've not already told, which I'm sure your Chaplain Corps and the force, and every time you meet with these units and soldiers, what's next for you? I didn't say at the beginning, but recently promoted. Congratulations, sir. Much deserved and earned. What's the next step for you? And then what would you like to leave behind, message to the force and for our soldiers and to your Chaplain Corps?
Yeah, what's next for me? Who knows but God? I am in my dream position. It's been a dream to assume this position. Humbly, I'm so thankful for that. My dream is to lead and grow a wonderful team. And then hopefully it's to help be a leader within the Army National Guard amongst the 54. There are positions up the chain. We'll see what happens down the road. Right now, I'm 1 year in as the state chaplain, a couple months in as a colonel. I just want to build the best possible team I can and leave this place better than I found it. That's my dream. And then we'll see what the future holds. There's opportunities, but I'm in my sweet spot. I can't think of any better place to be. Man, Colorado.
It's funny that you say that, and we look at and we talk to especially the senior leaders and kind of VIPs within the organization that we have, and it's ringing bell after bell, the same message but said differently by our leaders within the organization is they're not looking forward. They're enjoying where they're at. They enjoyed the process, trusting the process, and doing the right thing until the point where they're at, and the job that they have right now, that's what their entire focus is on, and they're going to do the best job possible.
I think it's wise counsel to say bloom where you're planted. If you're always dreaming about the next thing, you're not going to really excel where you're at. If there's further service I can provide, great. I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm right where I'm supposed to be right now, but I've got the best team.
Live in the moment.
Live in the moment.
That's great. So if you're liking the content, like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell.
Absolutely.
So whenever we upload any video, you can get notified. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, CO National Guard, CO National Guard. I want to mention your social media. So on Facebook, you appear as Colorado National Guard Chaplain Corps.
Yeah.
Our viewers can see as we talk and follow along, right, Sergeant Rivera?
Just type in CONG Chaplain Corps, and you'll get to follow the adventure. You'll see our Baking with the Chaplain series. Whatever we do, videos. You'll see about events coming up, and we are really intentional to be joint as well.
And is this page and your social media monitored and ran by Chaplain?
Yeah.
Okay, the Chaplain Corps, very good. So if our soldiers...
I got a response this morning from someone seeking to join the team, so I'm able to just talk them back and forth.
And then we have Instagram too.
If you're listening, if you're watching, and this is your calling, and this is maybe something that you would like to learn more about, feel free to send a message, through the platform, or if you're a soldier serving currently and you are maybe experiencing an issue and you've gone through your chain of command, or maybe it's something that can go outside the chain of command because it's personal and spiritual,
come see me, or reach out. I'm at Joint Force Headquarters in Centennial. You're always welcome at the chaplain's office. I don't care who you are, you're welcome to come in.
What I want you to kind of go the overview of the entire conversation, sir. I know it was a lot, and it's a fire hose of information, and there's a lot of stuff that you said that we can cover on future podcasts, which I hope there's more of. We can only keep our fingers crossed. But is there anything you'd like to touch on that maybe we didn't ask, or you had thought about on the way over here that you wanted to address?
Do we close the podcast?
No, not closed.
Oh.
Not yet. Don't worry. The last two questions, they're coming.
I was like, I'm like, where's
it? Is there anything that on your drive over here, sir, you thought you were going to talk about or wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
That's a great question. I'm really thankful for the Colorado National Guard for giving me an opportunity and for trusting me. I think the trust that's been placed in me by Major General Clellan and General Rogers, General Finner, and other senior leaders, it makes me want to prove them right. When you trust your team, you just want to go. You just want to go through the wall for people.
Yes.
And so I wake up every day saying, I'm in my best job. I'm thankful for and I'm able to raise my family and live here in Colorado. It's been a joy.
That's great.
I wanted to save that last question, kind of off record. I don't know if you want to talk about this and your opinion on it or not, sir. But we say that we wear the same badge, the Army Mountain Warfare School Basic Mountaineering Badge, and there's a whole lot going through social media right now. I know there's some changes with expert infantryman badges and expert soldier badges and master badges and a maritime badge. And this is all breaking news if you're watching the podcast. Again, those things that if you want to come into our organization, just volunteer for everything because the opportunities are limitless. But what is your opinion on having gone through Mountain Warfare School up at Jericho, Vermont with those instructors and being issued and awarded the Ram's Head device that has a very strong lineage and heritage and history here with Camp Hale and the origination of the 10th Mountain Division, and now the Sergeant Major of the Army saying I think he called it the goat's head, and now they are going to redesign. What are your feelings having been awarded the award, sir? If you want to say it officially or unofficially.
Yeah.
Give me a quick. Can time real quick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I gotta run to the bathroom.
Oh yes.
Oh
sir.
yeah.
I thought you were saying no. We're not talking about this.
I want to. Can we edit that? So I can
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, sir.
We can leave. We can leave.
Where's the bathroom?
Out the door and then immediate left, sir. Either door.
We
No.
we can leave it just there.
Yes, sir.
I think Joe Rogan breaks like 3 times, right?
He does.
He does. So, so we're back from our 40 time.
The bathroom break. We've had to do it before, and I thought.
It's so funny.
I think it's the first time, right?
Before I
came
came
breaks.
here, to be fair, I drank a huge diet Pepsi, then coffee. I'm like, hey man, I'm 48 now, baby. I gotta.
I thought when I asked that question about the current Ram's Head mountaineering badge that you were saying we're not going to talk about this, Chaplain.
No. I went to Mountain Warfare School when I was a major, and that was pretty senior to go.
Mm-hmm.
I had when I was a brigade chaplain, infantry. Our infantry battalion was a mountain infantry. Incredible experience. And I remember some of the NCOs they'd have a little fun ribbon with the chaplain. I would be climbing up the mountain, and they'd be like, "He is risen," But to this day, I keep in touch with some of the folks in my platoon. At least on social media.
Sure,
it was a wonderful experience. They didn't have any record in the modern iteration of this course of a chaplain going through the course. So I was really thankful. I remember when the chief of staff said, "Yeah, you can go, but just know what you're getting yourself into." And that was always in the back of my head, like, shoot, I can't fail.
Sure.
And I was a terrible rock climber, but I'm a good rucker. But I learned all the systems. I would stay up late at night in the knots corral. And about 6 months before the school, all I would do is just tie knots. Drove my wife nuts. Mm-hmm. But I'd be tying them everywhere just to figure out. Knots never came real easy to me, just the way my brain thinks.
Mm-hmm.
But then it became part of who I was. I could do it with my eyes closed. I could tie all the systems and knots, and in the forest, and it's raining. It was an incredible experience. I can close my eyes, and I'm right there again.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
It's beautiful.
And I know change is inevitable, and that's what, we thrive.
So back to the badge.
Yeah.
We get a lot of questions. They call it the Princess Leia badge.
Oh, yes, sir.
I would just love to see it recognized for the quality course it is, and that way when I'm at the Pentagon or other places, I don't mind answering questions, but it's a real unique opportunity, especially for those of us who live and serve in a mountain area.
Right.
To have those skills.
I hope they do it justice with the badge and the design and the heritage that spawned here with the original 10th Mountain Division.
Mountain. This is the home, baby.
It is.
I want to put it big so for those that they can't see it on the camera.
Active duty, if you're watching.
This is what they're talking about.
A lot of reservists, a lot of different branches of service. They see, especially members of the Guard wearing this badge and blown away.
Well, you've got air assault on you, and it was always my dream as a chaplain. Here again, I started at 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The knees are going to give out eventually, right? I was like, I want some kind of HUA course so I can make my teenagers proud of me.
Sure.
And so that was, it was just, but it was like life skills, like how to do a 3-in-1 pulley system, how to like a hauling system, how to to navigate, how to survive in cold weather, all avalanche. It was incredible.
Yeah, shout out to that school and the instructors.
The best.
The best Army school I think I've ever been to.
The food was great.
So probably after
that was something else. I hope they keep that.
That food was incredible.
So probably after that, you go to Home Depot, you get some like lumber, and then you're like, that's not going anywhere.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I loved it so much. I wanted to tie those systems in my backyard just to have it. Like I could just pull stuff across. And, but
great skills learned.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, sir. It's truly an honor. I know you're very busy and your team's very busy. We see the schedule of events that are available for our soldiers throughout the year, and I hope it continues. I know it will. Yeah. You guys have never let anyone down in this organization. To wrap up, we kind of end the podcast with 2 questions for everybody. Okay. And you've given a lot of advice, but if there was one piece of advice, a tip, a trick, a quote, something from your career, whether military or not, that you would like the audience to hear, that you would like to pass off. And then twofold, while you think about that, we like to ask our guests to challenge somebody to come onto the podcast. So if you have anybody in mind, I'll leave you with both those questions to end us out.
I don't know why. I really want to stress to anyone who happens to listen to this the importance of relationships. I love to read. I love to think about people who've lived life well. But if you really want to be content and happy in life, it's not how big your house is, what rank you achieve one day, how much money you have in your TSP or retirement account. It's going to be the people that you invested in and allowed to invest in you. And that is my driving passion, that my kids see that. I want them to see the reason we host our life group every Tuesday night or go to a house with 7 other families is because I know I'm way too busy sometimes for it, but I'm too busy not to have quality relationships in my life. I've got to have brothers and sisters in my life who will sharpen me to be the best possible version of who I am going to be. And when I get around people who challenge me in different areas, physical, fitness-wise, spiritual, family, investments, money, it shapes me into a much better person. So I would say, okay, lots of words, find people that you want to be like in whatever area that is, and find a way to be around them. I know people say that all the time, but I'm like, oh, that guy has his physical fitness, or that gal has her physical fitness under control. Spend time with them. That person's a lifelong learner, or they wrote a book. I want to write a book. Spend time with them. That person seems to have a good understanding of spiritual fitness. Spend time with them. And then all of a sudden, you're going to become a much better version of all the things that you are. And even the way I shape my team, they're not all like me. I'm a real loud, that's where that red thunder comes from, right? My red mustache, and I'm really loud. I was an aviation chaplain for 7 years. Call signs are prevalent there. But not everyone on my team's like that. Some are very soft-spoken, and my soldiers, they are drawn to different types and personalities. That's good. I don't want them all to be copycats of me, right? And all of us have a place for that. So, does that make sense? Surround yourself with people that are better than you in an area you want to grow, and find a way to spend time.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a lot of people I'd like to call out to be on this.
Do we need to write this down? We'll go back.
Well, I'll clip this, but it will not be on Instagram. It's just for me to
reach out to them.
Send a bunch of emails.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, please.
I don't know. I was just thinking about some folks. But one guy that really has impressed me a lot, I've been watching him quietly. I always watch people. First Sergeant McNeil, he is the first sergeant of Alpha Battery, 3rd of the 157th. He also happens to work as a full-time part of our family programs team. I'd love to have him on here to tell his story. His son is also striving to become a professional wrestler down in Arizona. I think it'd be a great, hilarious thing to hear about that and his son's journey. That guy, I've watched him, and he and I have worked on cases in real tragic situations. He is the epitome of an up-and-coming NCO. I'd love to hear his story some more, too. I'd like to have Colonel Sean Burke come on here as our G1 and hear about his triathlons that he runs. I think it'd be really cool someday, after you've gotten some distance between this one, to hear from Chaplain Yurakmil Gorelik, my rabbi, kind of hear his perspective of what it's like to serve as in a minority faith tradition amongst a bunch of Judeo-Christian folks and non-believers. General Finner, I think it'd be good to hear. That guy's a lifelong learner.
Yeah. And he already mentioned to us, like, we saw him at the tag match.
Yeah, he approached you directly.
Yeah, and he was like, "Hey, I'm
he's
a fan.
He's
I
always
want to
get
in.
Read a new book, and so he'd be wonderful.
Yeah, and I think it was Colonel German's. I don't know if it was his change of command or his promotion. He mentioned that, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I know. He have watched all of the podcasts.
He's always learning and growing. Yeah.
And then I also wanted to give you thank you for those individuals to come onto the podcast, sir. I would like to give you the opportunity, if you think it's appropriate, to close out for our audience in prayer and to say a prayer for the community, state of Colorado, nation, world, whatever you would like, sir.
I'd love to. Thanks. Join me if you would. Father, I'm so thankful for the opportunity to come and to share with my brothers here and to talk about the journey of being a chaplain. Lord, I do pray for the Colorado Guard, that you keep those who are presently in harm's way, that you watch over them, for those who are preparing to deploy, for those who are ready at any moments to do a search and rescue mission or to serve our state. Father, we also just pray for the upcoming election. We just hope that there's a peaceful transition of power, that you'll just give everyone the inspiration to get out and vote and exercise their rights as Americans. Father, our nation needs you. We pray that we could, as military members, just give a great example of what service looks like to protect our nation, to protect our freedoms. Be with this country, Lord. Pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Well, Sergeant Rivera, do you have anything else?
No. I think the only thing we forgot is the trophy.
Oh yeah, the trophy. Yeah.
Before we go, we gotta mention.
Looked at it before.
We gotta mention that because that's a big thing.
And so what is this trophy we're going to be looking at here, sir?
Yeah, this is we call this the Courage and Compassion Award. Years ago, 2017, I kept hearing people talk about all the tragedies, suicides. I said, what we don't hear enough of are the triumphs of the NCOs, officers, warrant officers who get in the midst and they stand in the gap to help a service member in need. And so as of today, we've had 30 folks receive that since 2017. And these are, on the side of that trophy is their name engraved for posterity, and also they get a Colorado Achievement ribbon. It's not hard. You just get recommended by someone, say, hey, this NCO officer, warrant officer, they intervened in the life of someone who was suicidal, someone who was wrestling with alcoholism, someone who's going through tragedy, and they did this, and this. And I take that information and we write this award because we want to tell the good news stories too. We have some incredible folks here that would give the shirt off their back to help people. And as a result, not because of this award, but I think as a culture, a responsive command culture, kind of an awareness, a good team collaboration, we're seeing real positive trends when it comes to things like suicide ideation, suicide, trauma, some of those kind of things. That's just one little piece of it. Certainly not because your name's on a plaque, but it's because we care about people next to us.
Yeah, that's great. And you know what? Again, I mentioned this when I extended the invitation to the podcast. Is like when I saw that, that was the main thing I saw. Is like is awareness to do the right thing. You know, if you're seeing someone that is struggling, or if he's out of the group, you know, like the first line also is the NCOR and the leadership.
They're the key.
Yeah, like
I've got a small team compared to the NCOs out there.
Sure.
They're the ones who. They have the real pulse on their Joes. Like, hey, why is that guy or gal showing up late? What's wrong with them? Why do they smell like alcohol? What's going on? Yeah, so the chaplains desperately need a good team work to head that stuff on.
So, again, if you, are struggling, or if you even want to have like a chat, right? Just, go by, talk to your chaplain at your unit.
Please.
Chaplain Nagel is over there in Joint Forces Headquarters at the first
first floor, the two-story
building. Yeah.
I have a full-time chaplain, Chaplain Fanning, out at Buckley. We have a full-time chaplain down at the 100 GMD, and we have a bunch of folks who would just love to be there for you.
Yeah. So they're all over state, and again, follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and shoot them a message if you wanna contact any chaplains, and stay connected.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you again so much, sir.
Honored to be on this Elevated Duty podcast. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
Great
awesome.
Podcast.
Yeah.